Married my long-term partner Darren shortly after my diagnosis. I don't have any children, but I am close to my stepson Neil, who is now grown up. I had taken early retirement from my job as an NHS manager at a large London teaching trust in February 2011. I'd been feeling tired for quite a while, and I put this down to having a stressful job and the fact that I was going through a long drawn out menopause. I was also experiencing mild abdominal pain, but assumed that was also a symptom of the menopause, and I thought I would feel less exhausted after a few months' rest. But by June, I felt more tired than ever, and I started to have attacks of diarrhea after eating. I also seemed to be putting on weight round the middle. I was surprised because I hadn't been eating as much recently as my appetite had decreased. I started to feel anxious because I did know that I had two symptoms of ovarian cancer. I was also aware that I had an increased risk because I'd never been pregnant. In mid-July, I had an emergency appointment with my GP, who thought I probably had an unsettled stomach, but said it would be a good idea to do a CA125 blood test to see if there was any indication of ovarian cancer. She also said she'd be happy to send me for a scan, even if the CA125 fell within the normal range, i.e. up to 35. The test came back at 1,255, and although my GP explained that this didn't necessarily mean cancer, I was sure it was because my symptoms matched. I also guessed that because my symptoms were pronounced, that it was probably late stage. After an ultrasound scan at the beginning of August, I met my gynae-oncology consultant for the first time. Following that, I also had a CT scan and then was admitted to hospital in September for a biopsy and drainage of the ascites, the fluid surrounding the tumours. By that time, I was enormous. The biopsy report confirmed that I had stage 4 ovarian cancer, with secondaries in the omentum, the lymph nodes, and the spleen. I also had fluid in the lining of the lungs, which explained why I'd been feeling short of breath recently. After the drainage, I felt more comfortable, though I did suffer a few bouts of vomiting, something I got used to over the next few months. I was also told that the best plan for me was to have 3 cycles of chemo, carboplatin and paclitaxel, before surgery, and another 3 cycles afterwards. Darren and I managed to squeeze in our wedding 3 days before my first chemo cycle. I wore a dress from Marks and Spencer's, 3 sizes bigger than usual. The drainage had reduced the bloat, but it still didn't feel like my body, so I wasn't prepared to splash out on an expensive outfit. I really felt as if I was choosing a dress for another person. I cried when I promised to look after Darren in sickness and in health, because I didn't think I would ever get that chance. It would just be him looking after me. I had chemo every 3 weeks, and although I felt awful for several days afterwards, it did seem to be working. After the first cycle, my CA125 came down to 705, and my tummy started to get smaller. My hair started to fall out after the first cycle, and so Darren helped me to shave it off. I relied on my wig and eyebrow pencil and eyeliner to transform me back into somebody I recognised in the mirror. During my second chemo, I started to feel sick and dizzy, and what I always describe as silver Christmas tree baubles started to float in front of my eyes. I vomited and the chemo was halted, and I was given hydrocortisone. I was scared that I might not be able to continue, but after 30 minutes, the chemo was restarted and I didn't have any more reactions. After the third cycle, I had a CT scan which showed significant improvement, and I was now ready for surgery. This took place in November 2011, and I had a hysterectomy, removal of the ovaries, omentum, lymph nodes, and spleen. Because I no longer have a spleen, I am vulnerable to chest diseases, and so I take a low dose of antibiotics every day as a preventative. The surgeon came to see me the morning after the operation and said he couldn't be more pleased. Almost all the tumours had disappeared, and even the ones that remained in the spleen had reduced in size. I had a bit of trouble with nausea and vomiting and felt weak, but I made a good recovery and was discharged a week later. I resumed chemo at the beginning of December. I continued to suffer from nausea, insomnia, etc. each time, but the end was in sight, and I had my last chemo on 23rd of January 2012, and a scan in February showed no abnormality. I was told by my oncologist that although no one could promise me that it wouldn't reoccur, I should try and live my life on the assumption that it wouldn't, otherwise I would be paralysed. And for me personally, that turned out to be very good advice. So it is now 7 years since I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and I have follow-up appointments every 12 months. I did get a bit of a shock in October 2015 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Luckily, this turned out to be lobular breast cancer, the less aggressive kind, and was caught at stage 2 and hadn't spread to the lymph nodes. I had a lumpectomy and radiotherapy, and it hasn't felt anything like the ordeal I had with ovarian cancer. After this diagnosis, I was tested for the BRCA gene mutation, but the test was negative. So that's where I am today. Next month, Darren and I celebrate our 7th wedding anniversary, a date I didn't expect to see, and I'm glad to say that I have had plenty of opportunity to look after him in sickness.